Good morning, welcome. Thank you all for joining. A few more people are coming, but we'll get started. Um, let's just start with a moment of gratitude. Certainly, we have so much to celebrate because Reverend Dr. Eric Elnes has contributed to our story. And so I think it feels appropriate for us to start by just pausing and blessing how gracious and how much gratitude we feel for your presence in our story and forever being part of our story, and for God's blessing upon us, for bringing you to us, and for knowing that we will hold you in our hearts. So we'll just take just a moment to let that sink in. Thank you. All right. So we have a sunny, bright day to celebrate Eric being here with us today. And we're going to start with just have us catch us up. Tell us how you've been spending your final days in Omaha at Countryside, and what's new with you, Eric?
A lot of ramping up and shutting down at the same time. So a lot of packing. I showed people earlier on my screen, that's what my whole house looks like right now. We got a pod that just came about 30 minutes ago to put stuff in for a first move, and saying a lot of goodbyes. And Countryside's held a lot of really nice smaller events to say goodbye. We had a lot. We just installed our new organ, so we held just a slew of concerts, and I went to most every one of those. And then they put me and my wife behind a glass wall with a microphone and speaker, and another microphone and speaker on the other side of the wall, and so we could speak without masks and say goodbye. It felt a little bit like being in the zoo, but it was really nice. So a lot of happy, sad feelings right now.
I believe this weekend is your last sermon. Is that
Yes.
correct? Can you tell us a little bit about that? And
Sure.
those who are not members of Countryside, welcome to attend.
Yes, absolutely. And we broadcast on KMTV as well. Although this of all Sundays, they preempted us. And so we're at 7 a.m. instead of 10:30 a.m. So hopefully people have DVRs or but otherwise, at our website at countrysideucc.org, you can get links to the worship at the regular time at 10:30. And because it is broadcast more widely, my theme is really about transitions more generally, and so a lot of people can relate to it. And then at 11 o'clock after the worship, we're going to have a special Zoom session where I'll make more personal remarks to the congregation, and we'll have kind of a farewell liturgy of sorts. So. But the theme is a good Hebrew Bible theme. It's the Hebrews disassembling and reassembling the tabernacle wherever the pillar of flame goes in the wilderness.
Interesting. All right. So I'd love you to tell all of us about the congregation that you're heading to serve, and about your calling to go there. If you could tell us that story.
Sure. Yeah, well, the congregation is an old historic congregation in downtown Portland. It's about 2 blocks away from all the things you see on the news. So they're right in the thick of it. They are a United Church of Christ congregation, just like Countryside. And they were founded in 1841. I recently learned, actually, it was founded by the very minister who founded the college I went to, Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington, too. But it's been a prominent church in Portland for a long time, and just like many, though, more mainline churches in the inner city, they've experienced quite a lot of decline in the last decade or so. So they're quite the sanctuaries is as large as Countryside's, but they have about 220 people on the roll, so it's a significantly smaller congregation, and they are in significant need of a turnaround. Then And so it's probably the biggest risk and the biggest challenge I've ever taken in my life. And so in terms of my call, I wasn't planning on leaving this soon. I was planning on leaving before I retire. I'm 56 now. My wife is 7.5 years older than I am. So don't tell her I said that. Oh, this is being recorded. Okay, hi Melanie. Well, sorry. Anyway, if I were to wait here, we're from the Pacific Northwest, and many of you know we go back there every summer where we have a family cabin in the southern Oregon coast, and so we always felt like if we wait till I'd retire, it wouldn't be very fair to Melanie, but it was still going to be several more years. But when I caught COVID this last March, I think I was number 2 in Omaha to catch it. I brought it back from Spain, and back at the time they didn't know as much as they did now, and of course techniques have changed too, but at the time the best information was that 1 out of 20 people die from this, and then if you die, you had 17 days to live between onset of symptoms and death. And I felt great. I mean, I just had a mild cough, but that kind of got me thinking, maybe I better take this seriously. And so I kind of did this deep plunge, everything Eric Elnes, and am I ready to die? You know, could I die in 17 days? And it was largely a happy analysis. I realized I've lived a full life. I'm not particularly scared of death, and I've been way more blessed than I deserve. But I did realize I would die with one very, very significant regret. Significant to me, not in the wider scheme of things, but very significant to me and my family, which is that my wife and I never had the opportunity, which we'd been dreaming about since we were married, to live together in the Pacific Northwest. Every time we'd had an opportunity to go, we'd always made the mistake of saying, well, God, the Pacific Northwest, please, but thy will be done. But that's always served us well. So you proof that God has a twisted sense of humor. The first place we wound up was in the desert of Arizona and Scottsdale for 13 years. These, the Seattle boys in the desert. But that was a fabulous 13 years there. And so we realized that it pays to follow that intuitive path, even though it doesn't seem logical. And by the time we were done in Scottsdale, feeling like we were ready to go, we knew absolutely, you might as well ask us if it was gravity. But we knew we would be in the Pacific Northwest. God wouldn't be such an idiot as to not send us there. And then Countryside came calling. And the sure sign that there was a true call was that we fell so deeply in love with Countryside so fast that we just said, forget the Pacific Northwest, we can get there later, and came. And again, it's just been this fabulous, fabulous journey. So we've always trusted, the intuitive piece of it, and not worrying so much about the logic piece. And so anyway, I caught COVID and had this life kind of epiphany that if I died, I would have this significant life regret. And then it was just like a week later, then suddenly this church pops up looking for a minister in UCC church in Portland, Oregon. And my wife and I kind of went, well, that's weird. They have this big epiphany, and then that happens. And, so coincidences happen. I mean, sometimes things like that just are pure coincidences. They mean nothing. But sometimes it's the Spirit kind of tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, you need to look in this direction you're not looking at. And we decided, we really wrestled about what to do with that, and because I really didn't feel like I was ready to leave. But we decided, well, let's just honor this. This is obviously on the chance that it is the Spirit, and this is something significant. We should at least get my profile together and apply, and just keep praying and keep feeling that intuitive path. Because we weren't feeling like we were ready to leave, and so we would know, would have to take a very high bar to put us over that, and we'd just keep praying. And well, sure enough, the same kind of fire that lit up, that kind of pillar of fire that brought us to Countryside originally lit up. And then it was like, oh, well, what do we do? What do we, no. No. And it didn't make sense. It's like going to a much smaller church in a much more risky situation in a city that's on fire. I was like, wait, but it just that path kept being lit up and overcoming the objections. And so finally, we accepted the call there in August and informed the congregation. So we are, our families all back there, my mother and brother and Melanie's father and sister and brother and so forth. And So that's a significant draw as well. But, if it was just about family, we could have gone anytime. We really do believe in only going, when you feel like that intuitive path is saying it's time, and we trust that. And so we're trusting it now.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna let you rest your vocal cords for a minute. We're gonna talk about you instead of letting you talk a little bit. Reverend Dr. Chris Alexander, your partner at Countryside, is going to share whatever she chooses to share with the group about you. Does that make you nervous?
There's not any sharing about anybody.
All right, Chris, thank you for being here.
Sure, I'm happy to be here. I was asked to share a story about Eric. And I'm now finishing my 10th year of being a colleague with Eric at Countryside, and it's been quite a ride. But we have the whole memory of coming into the Tri-Faith as such a pleasure for me to be a part of, being a colleague with Eric in that. And I remember very distinctly the vote that we took to become the final partner in the Tri-Faith, to come be the Christian partner. And it happened in April of 2015. And there had been so much contention because we had done a year and a half worth of kind of discernment to figure out whether or not we should even do this, if we felt called by God to do it, if we had the resources and the interest to do it, what it meant for our community, what it meant for everything. And we lost a lot of support in the meantime, and we had a lot of people angry, and we had a lot of people confused, and we had a lot of people very excited. And it was just a really kind of weird time. But we felt in our congregational vote that we had to make sure that we did everything by the book, to make sure that everybody's voice was heard, to make sure that we were in fact listening to God, as well as listening to the people in the congregation and their fears, as well as their frustrations, as well as their financial concerns, all that kind of stuff. And so we had to have these tables set up right in front of our sanctuary for the vote, that if you were a member, you got to check. It was like voter registration, right? You had to check the thing and say that you were in fact a member and you were eligible to vote. Otherwise you weren't allowed in. The doors were locked. It was just really a weird feeling. It was anxious. It was frustrating. And we were all in this room making a decision of a lifetime. And all of us were anxious and fearful and worried and excited and all that stuff coming all together at one time. And we had no idea what was going to happen, whether something was going to explode or not. And Eric stood up in front of everybody and took a deep breath and asked the congregation to take a deep breath. And then went into this meditation where he asked people to close their eyes and open their minds and find that space where they felt the most safe, the most calm. He had them sit there in that calm for a little while and kept throwing images at them that would help calm the situation down and invite the room to open up and breathe and invite the spirit in. And it was the most transformative thing I've ever seen in my life. It was astounding the way that the room just started breathing on its own. And that transformation was something that only Eric can do. And it was astounding. And the vote then was well informed. It had people talking very generously toward each other about what we should do and what God calls us to do. It was very clear that the Spirit and God were right there in the room with us. And we did, in fact, vote to become the Christian partner of the Tri-Faith Initiative. And that was an astounding kind of view of what Eric gives to this community and what he has been giving to this community all along. As colleagues, we disagree on a great many things and we fight fiercely over that. But as friends, he taught me about smoked meats and Ethiopian food and jazz music and all kinds of wonderful things that I've opened up to in these last 10 years that I wouldn't have otherwise. And for that, I am most grateful. And I am very sorry to be missing my friend. Thanks, Eric, for everything.
Thank you, Chris.
Mhm.
Rabbi Stoller, if you have some words that you would like to share with the group, now would be a great time.
Thank you for inviting me. Well, I guess I'd like to build on what Chris was just saying. Such a powerful description of Eric. I really see Eric Elnes as kind of the ideal, spiritual leader, because to me, he represents the perfect blend of intellectualism and spirituality and vision and creativity. And they all of the, not everybody has all of those qualities. Most of us kind of tend to one or another, but it seems to me that Eric really embodies all of them in equal measure. And so I really admire the leadership, Eric, that you bring to Countryside and also to the Tri-Faith Initiative and the Tri-Faith Clergy Group. I think I feel that we really look to you as in some ways. I mean, we're all clergy people, but I think we all look to you as the spiritual leader of the group, because you really do embody all of these qualities and such wisdom. And on a personal respect, I'm very grateful because Eric, you have made time for me over the course of the last several years to sit with me on a regular basis and to talk through any and all kinds of things, from kind of brass tacks questions of leadership and management on the one hand, to philosophy and text and and big spiritual ideas on the other. And you're so well conversant in all of those areas, and I feel I've learned a tremendous amount from you. So I guess in short, I aspire to be Eric Elnes when I grow up.
Thank you.
We will miss you, Eric, and thank you for all the many gifts that you have given to us.
I always thought you had higher aspirations than that.
All right, we're going to give Rabbi Azrael the floor next, but while he gets ready, Eric, can you tell us something that few people know about you? Tell us like a best kept secret about Eric Elnes.
Somebody was actually just asking that, at the Tri-Faith board the other day, and I was just clearing out my office. I don't have nearly as much bookshelf space at the new church as I do here, so I'm leaving things behind, and I was just kind of weighing books and so forth, and I realized, okay, do I really need the cuneiform study books that I have anymore? And so one of the things that few people know about me is that I actually at one point in my life could read cuneiform tablets and translate them.
How was that helpful to you or to us?
Actually,
What'd you learn? Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, I actually learned quite a lot. It seems kind of strange. I could spend the whole hour just on that, but I'll share with you one tablet that was just, I think you'll all relate to. 3000 BCE, a letter from a child to his mother, and he's away at the equivalent of boarding school. And his mother says, "Mother, this happens every year. School starts and all the kids have brand new clothes to wear, but you send me rags." And he says, "Now, I know it's not because we're poor. In fact, in our house, gold is consumed like bread." And he says, "Even our servant," apparently the servant's son was also there, "even the son of our servant, he has better clothes to wear than I do. Clearly, his mother loves him, but you, mother, do not love me." That was his letter. 3000 BCE. The more things change, the more things remain the same.
Thank you. I'm sure there's been a sermon in that. That's fascinating. Thanks for sharing. Rabbi Azrael, I know you're mad that he's leaving. Tell us why, and tell us special things that you've gained in your time together. You're muted. Undo your mute, yeah.
How can anyone be mad after the victory of the new president? Eric, I don't know if you remember, but very early in establishing our relationship, you invited me to your house, and we spent a wonderful time of you talking to me about the God in your life and some of the things that you experience. And this was the beginning for me of feeling a lot more comfortable talking about how God acts in my life. So we rabbi many times are becoming rabbis of congregations because it was a good job and we got an offer. That's why I viewed my coming to Omaha from Baltimore as an opening, and I applied and they accepted me. But you introduce a whole language to me about those parts of our life that I have neglected to pay attention to. That there is something else. The calling that you spoke about became a language that I have been using since that meeting. And I actually feel very comfortable using it. And I have used it many times with Jewish members of the congregation, which sometimes they don't feel comfortable with that term coming from my mouth. But I, as a result of our conversation throughout the years, I feel very comfortable in speaking about the calling in my life. Now, we had some exciting and terrifying moments in our life, especially when the imam was the driver. We went to a conference of Reform rabbis, and we went also to Chicago for the award that we received on the Tri-Faith experience. And when the imam was holding the wheel, both of us were in deep prayer of survival. I don't know if the imam is on the call. Is he on the call?
He's out of town today. He wasn't able to join us.
Yeah, too bad, because I'm sure he can reaffirm those moments. But also, he and I, both of us, tried to have a conversation with you, which was a little bit too late because you already made your mind to leave. We tried to bring all kind of reasons for you to stay, because that's how we felt. We felt as an amazing partner that can lift the Tri-Faith to a whole different level of intensity. And the last story I have is the story of the bread. I don't know if you guys know, but Eric is also a baker. And so about a few months ago, there was a email to me to check my front door. So I checked my front door, and there was a warm, hot, wonderful, beautiful bread with a Hebrew sentence. You see, Eric also speaks Hebrew. I know he needs a little bit of improvement. I don't know who is going to help him with the Hebrew once he moves away from here. Eric, you can always talk to me in Hebrew or any of the rabbis. And that bread was so tasty. And the Hebrew blessing that came with this was so correct that was a moment of inspiration. And since then, he left other gifts on the front door. And I want to thank you very much for those gifts that are tasty, but also for your spiritual gifts, and especially for helping Countryside join the Tri-Faith. There was definitely a moment in my life, in the work that we have done in the Tri-Faith, of desperation and not really knowing what will be the third stool that it will lay on. And there were hard moments, because even with the help of the other Christian group, the Episcopalian group that joined us, I still had difficulty envisioning a full participation to the participation that you and Countryside and everyone else has done. It's going to succeed because of that joining of the forces together. I wish you Nesiat Tova, a wonderful, meaningful trip, similar to the trip of Abraham in the Torah portion, Lech Lecha, when God tells him to move his behind and go to another place. And I wish you all the best. Mazal Tov for the new move. Thank you.
Thank you. So, kind of wrapped in all of those blessings, and reminded of some of those stories, can you reflect for us on what it was that made you so sure and attracted you to be a leader, to bring your congregation to Tri-Faith?
Yeah, it goes back to that intuitive path. About a year before the Episcopal bishop reached out to us, I'd been getting these weird feelings, stirrings in my soul about the Tri-Faith, and I didn't know what to do with them. They just felt like I should reach out and say something, and the Episcopals looked like they were maybe in a bit of a trouble, but you know, it was always like, oh, don't stir that pot, don't you know, just leave well enough alone. I mean, that's never going to happen anyway. So, but they kept, you know, so normally such feelings just kind of go away, but this just kept coming and coming, and it started to really kind of pique up my attention, because it's just like, well, but there's already a partner, and Countryside would never move. I mean, no church, almost no church ever moves to a new location if there's not other reasons besides a vision. I mean, like the roof caving in, or there's a new population on the edge of town and they're going to leave. And so, but then when I learned that Chris Alexander had been to a meeting with the Lutherans and had heard that they had reached out to the Lutheran church about, this is after a year of me feeling these things, and that they're reaching out because they were in trouble. It's like, oh my gosh, those intuitions were actually were meaningful in some way. And then shortly thereafter, then that the bishop had reached out, and it's like, okay, this is together. And okay, now I forgot what your question was.
What attracted you to the work?
Yeah, well, I didn't even know there was a Tri-Faith initiative before I came to Omaha. And shortly after I arrived, a team came to fill in the new minister about the Tri-Faith, and I was so blown away. I mean, I could not believe my good luck to have landed in a city with such an important initiative like this. And I knew that congregation was the Episcopal Church was small and was kind of even then kind of struggling to put something together. And I said, listen, you're moving 6 minutes from our church. If I were a member of Countryside, I would want to quit Countryside and move and be part of this church. And I'm sure a whole lot of our members would want to do the same thing. And so don't worry about reaching out to us for help. Like we're going to be intimidated by that. What you're doing is so much more important. I would gladly suffer the loss of a couple hundred members to go to your way to make sure this happens. And I'll encourage them, this has to work. This is so important for not only Omaha, but for the world. This has to work. And for up until then, I mean, my entire ministry, pluralism was one of the key things the issues that I chose to, work outwardly about. I always choose 2 issues that I'm going to take on in the wider world. And so I can say yes to everything in those 2 areas and no to everything else. And pluralism has always been that one. So I was always very much primed for that. And it made perfect sense to me there would be a Tri-Faith initiative. somewhere, but nothing existed. And so it's just so ironic that Countryside then became that person. We did lose, well, we lost about 200 households to do that, but we came, and I'm convinced that the reason I was called to Omaha was to help Countryside. I mean, look, in hindsight's 2020. I mean, why would the Spirit, counter the very strong will of the Spirit's servants to go to the Northwest to come here? And there's a whole lot of reasons actually. Countryside, if the tri-faith never even happened, but to me, it's clear that I was meant to be here. In 1995, when I was just leaving seminary, I actually got there was another different UCC congregation in Omaha that had reached out and asked me to apply. It was First Central, and back at the time there were about 900 members. They're smaller now, but and I actually came. I flew out here and preached for them, and I did not get that call. I missed the vote by 2 from the search committee, and which makes sense to me. I'd only served a church of 25 members as a part-time interim before that, and now step into a 900-member church, really. But that we were really enthralled by Omaha, but we never ever. We thought we would move if they offered us the call. We really loved it, but we never for a second ever thought about coming to Omaha again. We were always Pacific Northwest, so it just seemed so strange that here we would still come back. We would still be here, and the church would be able to serve an important role in the Tri-Faith Initiative, this thing that's so important.
So you brought up my next question, which is Omaha. And so I'm curious, what's something about Omaha that's not Tri-Faith and not Countryside that you're going to miss most?
The people. Definitely the people. Yeah, we felt so at home. We felt more at home in Omaha in just a matter of a few months than we had in 13 years in Arizona. I mean, and that has nothing to do with the church. The church I served, we felt very at home and we loved, but just the kind of the people of the area, we really related to Omaha and always have a lot more. Just people are so much more open and friendly and care about each other, and that sense of community is far deeper than it was in the Phoenix area, definitely. And the attention to values that are deeper than just simply conspicuous consumption and the kind of utilitarian consumerism that the rest of the country seems to be so enthralled by. Omaha, definitely is affected by all that, but is less affected and has been. And so my whole family noticed that as soon as we got here. Even my kids, I mean, they left Scottsdale where like shopping at the shopping mall was the sport of, that's what people did. That's what kids did, for fun and entertainment. And my kids were like, never really appreciated that. Come here, and it was like, oh. They didn't want to leave, but then when they came here and experienced Omaha, they're like, okay, we like this. We like this much more.
That's good. I feel like one of the Omaha perks is the restaurants. What's the restaurant that you're going to be hankering for in 3 months or 6 months? Because Deb is nodding. I bet Deb has got one on her list that she's missing from Boston right now.
There's so many, and I've eaten my way through Omaha several times. So over the course of the 13 years. But there's restaurants like, Cat Lalibela, that's the Ethiopian food that I just keep jonesing for about every 2 weeks and have to go to. And I love the Gray Plume for a very special occasion. But by far, for Mel and I love tons of restaurants here, but our go-to absolutely is La Bouvette down in the Old Market. We can't go there enough. And since we realized we were leaving, we've been trying to get there as many times as possible. That we just love that place. I used to live in France for a while, and I've been back to France many times, and I can say from my experience, there's no difference between sitting in La Bouvette having dinner and sitting in a bistro in Paris having dinner, even down to the attentive waitive staff, except they speak English there. But it's a very special place and we're going to miss that restaurant more than any other.
Great. Jeremy Fricke, our education director, is asking, if you were to suggest one book for everyone here to read, what would it be and why?
Oh, wow. Well, I guess this wouldn't be because it's my favorite book of all time or anything, but just because of the timeliness of why the book is helpful. But I would probably say The Righteous Mind by, oh, I'm blanking on his name now. It's
Jonathan Haidt.
Jonathan Haidt, yeah, which was actually originally recommended to me, I think, by Rabbi Stoller. I think Temple Israel did a congregational read of that or whatever. But to me, that was the biggest eye opener in terms of the differences between liberals and conservatives, and our failure to understand each other. It's a good book, well worth the read. You can skip the first 95 pages too. I mean, if you're a real nerd like me, you might want to go through all the data he gives and all that, but if you don't, just go turn to page 96 and start there.
Thank you. How did your time as senior minister of Countryside and your involvement with Tri-Faith prepare you for your next congregation?
I think that every time we, that it kind of goes back to that intuitive path thing, that that's not, following an intuitive path is not something that's supported by wider society, and there aren't tons of scientific studies that can say, oh, this is actually even real, or God is real, or the Spirit is real, or there's any interaction between God and humanity. There's nothing that supports that, can prove that. But so you kind of have to learn, your own experience and test and fall on your face and, think you're following it or not. But over time, you kind of learn kind of those signals, and that just, it's not that they come up and flash and that's it, but they keep coming back in certain ways. And even if you try to throw them out, and there's certain kind of language it has, and every time you become convinced, okay, this is the Spirit's call, and it turns out to be, have gone well, it gives you a little more confidence, in those things. And so the experience of the fact that this has been, even coming here was counter logical, but it was intuitive and worked out so well. And then to see what happened through a lot of things at Countryside, where that kept coming back, can be confirmed, and including the Tri-Faith, where our entire congregation then went through the same kind of stuff that I go through and have gone through to try to sift those things out. And to see now our whole congregation gained confidence in, like, okay, this stuff is real, and it really does benefit a person to pay attention to those inner waters when they are stirred. And it doesn't guarantee success in any endeavor, but it definitely puts you on the path you need to be, so that even when you struggle, those struggles are meaningful struggles that actually make your life more rich rather than meaningless struggles. So that's been I think one of the great learnings. Another learning, though, is that I definitely, on the more you kind of I don't know what side of it, but it's always driven me crazy, the fact that there's so many people at our church that I can look out at a crowd and see people and not know every single person's name or their story. One of the things that it also has taught me is I feel more comfortable where I feel I like to be able to be in a setting where I know everybody's name, and I know everybody, and I know something beyond the name. I know their stories. I can hold about a couple hundred names in my and stories in my head at any given time. And so as a pastor, I always yearn for more more relationships. So that was kind of I didn't realize that. Too. So there's that side of things too. But I also learned through Countryside that I had a prejudice against larger churches growing up, and even into my ministry. In fact, when I was in Scottsdale, I swore our church was growing, and I was getting nervous about it. Actually, it doubled in size, and I was worried about where it was going to go, because I said I will never serve a church more than 500 members, and if we grow past 400, we're going to start another church. Just keep it small, and so it's so that was the other very counter logical thing for me, coming to Countryside was to come to a church that was so much larger, despite my prejudices. But what Countryside taught me was that you can be an incredibly vital church. I mean, I had all these prejudices, like, you know, the churches that grow large, they never want to change, because whatever grew them large, they only ever want to do that, even if whatever grew them large is no longer relevant. That they would be like a Titanic or a huge, you know, ships that take, you know, 5 miles to take a turn. And I was used to being in a nimble congregation where you can take a turn fairly quickly, and that you couldn't have relationships with people. I thought all these things, and they were all proven wrong by Countryside. You could have very good and deep relationships with people, and Countryside proved to be just as nimble as the Scottsdale Congregational was in Scottsdale too. I mean, when people are open to the Spirit and see a vision, Countryside moves. Maybe not every church does, but Countryside does. So they blew away all my prejudices against serving in a larger church, and it's been a real joy.
Deb McAllister asked this question. I'm remembering a parking lot conversation during your search when I asked why Omaha, and you answered, and I being Deb, asked why Omaha. You answered about a progressive path being here, progressive path here making a statement. What would you say now? Why Omaha? Or why Seattle? Which is the question, Deb? You can unmute yourself. You're muted.
I'm not quite understanding the question. Sorry.
Well, we were asking, I could think, because we knew some of the other offers you had. There were bigger names, and we said, why would you choose to come to Omaha? And you said, if we can make a stand for progressive, inclusive faith in the middle of the heartland, it's a model for anywhere. Yeah. So I'm just wondering about your reflections about that purpose, the success, the failure, the challenges. I think that's something we all wonder about.
Well, I think the Tri-Faith Initiative is proof of that. That's a shining example, and I think the rest of the country is saying, yeah, well, if it can happen in Omaha, why couldn't it happen, where we are? So I think that's proof of it. I had a clear feeling when I first came. My very earliest impressions when I came to Omaha, I felt a little bit like Gandalf coming to Hobbiton. If you read The Hobbit, in the sense that Omaha kind of had this nice, comfortable bubble over it, where it was some of the ways that society has kind of degraded, and kind of some of the institutions have kind of started to crumble apart. Omaha still had some of those things, and so they had this comfort that a lot of this I didn't see on either the East Coast or the West Coast, where I lived on both coasts, and I thought, and so when I first got to Countryside, I would talk about the deep crisis in the church and Christianity and all this, and how this needs to change, and people would be like, what do you mean deep crisis? I don't see any crisis, and I'm like, but there is a crisis going on. It's like it felt like there's the dark Lord out there, like there's no crisis here, and over time that's changed. I mean the rest of the world has come in, but I always thought that Omaha had this very nice way of actually being slightly behind the times, and where relationships still matter, and not everybody was into their materialistic stuff, and institutions still mattered. And I thought, well, these institutions will crumble, but if we actually can be aware of that now, we have some lead time. We can actually adjust so that these things don't crumble so much when we catch up with the country, and maybe we could provide leadership then for the country as the country. And I think that, again, the Tri-Faith kind of is an example of how that is true.
So that leads into my next question, which is, so our mission has been to co-locate these bricks and mortar, these 4 buildings, the bridge, the garden, the orchard. I mean, wow. What advice do you have for all of us as we move forward?
I think they're going to sound like they contradict each other. But I see them as exactly one. One is that just never forget that this Tri-Faith thing is way bigger than you think it is in terms of its significance for the world, and what God is up to in the world right now is way bigger. I still to this day feel it, but I struggle to understand. I mean, it's like, feels like touching the edge of this huge beast, animal, very wonderful animal. And that we're just now only in the earliest beginnings of knowing why this is so amazingly important. On the other hand, I don't think that ought to be the motivation for being in the tri-faith. And you don't set out to just change the world. It's not going to be like that. It's not like we're so doggone important and all that. That actually the key to the importance is actually going to be on the smallest scales. That actually it's the relationships between the three congregations, despite whatever's happening in the world, and without even trying to change the world. It's the closer these congregations get together and have actual relationships with each other, that's where the magic is going to happen. And then where the gifts are going to come out. That is exactly where it resides. And so even though I've said, please don't forget that this is way bigger than it is, it's in a sense also, please do forget that it's way bigger. It's like, don't act to change the world, act to get into deeper and deeper relationships, because that's exactly where the Spirit is. There's so much more trust in you. The Spirit trusts us more than we trust us, and a spiritual call always feels like it's a compliment you don't deserve, and you don't. And it's also a calling that you can't measure up to, and you can't. I mean, the Spirit is always like, well, I'll be along with you. I'll be helping you. It's not you on your own. And but there's something about the people here, where the magic resides here, and to keep mixing it up with the people will create fabulous things. When I went to Spain just to do that research for the trip, I don't know if I'll be able to lead now, in southern Spain, and got to experience those places where Jews, Christians, and Muslims had actually gotten along and fabulously well and had deeper relationships. It was, oh my gosh, it was, I can't even describe how incredible that was. And to realize that we're tapping into that same, all the creativity that came out of that, all of the profound spiritual and even political and economic development that came out of that. I mean, it just blew me away. And I think this is the energy we're picking back up on and can develop. I really think that the Spirit is calling all of the great religions of the world, and beyond the tri-faith, but certainly the three Abrahamic faiths here, at this crisis moment. I mean, we are in an existential moment in our history. I mean, humanity may not survive the next 100 years. It really is going to depend on the decisions we make. And I don't think that God just simply sits back in the clouds looking down on us saying, well, good luck with that. But the Spirit has been working, I think, for even over 100 years to lead up to this moment, to help us give gifts, and is calling the religions of the world to come together, to share their gifts, to get over their fighting, to shed their fighting and the weaponization of faith, and to reclaim the gifts that these great traditions have. Religion is despite all the trouble it can make, it is also gives us the greatest gifts that the world has to offer, and especially to meet the present crises. It's time that we claim those gifts and we come together and use them for the benefit of humanity.
Sorry, I have to finish writing down what you said so that I can use it in some letter that I write to everybody later. I'll quote you. What does so you told us about a broad vision, but what does success look like for us in the next 5 years? Like what's the first next step that you suggest to deepen those relationships between the people who are here and the people that are not here today on this call? It's harder than it looks.
Well, in the shortest run, I hope that I hope that the congregations themselves can have more experiences like the clergy have been having, because until the COVID happened, we were getting together regularly and saw each other, some of us oftentimes weekly, and deep conversations. And those have just been some of the most transformative experiences of my entire ministry. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Looking at my own faith, I look at it with lenses now that are not just my Christian lenses, but I have a Jewish and a Muslim lens over it, and it's just like being on an optometrist's office where you're looking at the eye chart, and certain things that seemed fuzzy suddenly become clear, and other things you thought you knew what it was, you realize that's not a B, it's an E, and that's the way it's caused one of the greatest revitalizations of my own faith that I've had in many, many years. And to me, the next best step for the tri-faith is that more and more people get to experience that on a real level. So for instance, just make it more concrete. When I was, if you ask a Christian, what does love neighbor mean? Jesus says that's one of the most important things, loving your neighbor as yourself. Well, who is your neighbor? And oftentimes we'll turn to the story of the Good Samaritan, where the guy that was beaten up, left for dead on the side of the road, and a couple of religious leaders pass him by, but then this Samaritan picks him up, takes care of him, and a lot of times we kind of, what we derive from that is like, everybody who's in need, and so we're, especially as progressives, we work tirelessly to help everybody we can in need. They're all of our neighbors, and we keep trying to help more and more people until we become exhausted. And but when everybody is your neighbor, then sometimes it can be nobody is your neighbor. And when I asked, I think it was Rabbi Stoller, I can't remember. I can't remember who I'd asked. What does that mean in Judaism? And he brought up the mitzvah, and where there is an act that you do that's above and beyond to help a person, every day, and that's how you relate to the world as your neighbor. And I suddenly was brought back to a time when I was in Closter, New Jersey, in this little tiny church. As I was finishing my dissertation, I was serving as a part-time interim minister, and a Jewish couple used to come because I would frequently preach from the Hebrew scriptures, and they liked to hear it. And one day my car failed to work, and I had a 45-minute drive to get to my house, and they offered to drive me, and I'm like, oh no, I can't put you out. And they're like, no, we really can't. Oh, no, please, no, I'll call my wife. He goes, no, you're helping us. We have to do a mitzvah today. And you're actually doing us a favor by letting us help you, And of course, yeah. I mean, but it actually did relieve a lot of guilt. I was like, okay, well, if I'm helping you a little bit, I'll accept that, right? And of course, we had this fabulous time for 45 minutes just talking in the car, and had a much deeper relationship developed as a result of that. And like the mitzvah, there's something I could take into my neighbor relationship. And then I asked Imam Jamal, what does being a neighbor mean to you? And he's like, well, there's this hadith where Muhammad was asked that very question. He said, count 40 houses this way, 40 houses this way, 40 houses this way, and 40 houses this way. They are your neighbors. You need to take care of them. Like, whoa, how many of my neighbors do I know? If I counted 40 houses, every direction. And of course, I live, on 13th Street in an area where, it's developing right now, but there's a lot of distress too in it. And ever since then, those conversations, I have been working on my mitzvah a day, and I've been working at getting to know my neighbors better and helping them out more. So it really puts a concreteness to the faith and a clarity that is just tremendous for every person in the congregations to have, pull out lots of stories like that themselves. That's when the magic is happening, and whatever the reason the tri-faith is existing for is actually is in the process of coming to fruition.
Thank you. So a couple pieces of business. I want to make sure I'm going to put in the chat. We have an impact evaluation just before anybody needs to drop off. I want to make sure that if you haven't had a chance to give us feedback, we would love all of you to participate in that. In reflecting on what Reverend Elnes was just saying about the intentional coming together, please watch for additional details about this next stage of neighbor to neighbor and opportunities for us to gather small groups of people using Zoom, because it looks like for the winter months, we will certainly be gathering in Zoom, but we're going to start to facilitate bringing tri-faith small groups together. We've called those neighbor to neighbor, but we're going to be more intentional about reforming those. So we would love you to take on that mitzvah upon yourself, to realize that we can't do this work for you, but we can facilitate it happening, and we need you to show up to make those relationships happen. So that's an invitation from my heart to yours. I want to ask Preeta's question as our last question, and then Cantor Alexander is going to offer a closing blessing for us. So Preeta's question is, with what communities or congregations do you hope to bridge in Oregon, and how will you go about doing that?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, the church does have a history of interfaith relationships, and so that's I definitely plan to explore that deeply. And I have a commitment to doing ministry for the church itself and what's the magic there, not just bring whatever I think ought to be there. So it'll depend on the congregation, but I would love to see, part of me is just intrigued, like, oh, could I be like the first clergy little seed anyway to seed another tri-faith relationship there. But also Oregon is amongst the most heavily unchurched area of the whole country. And they're so deeply unchurched that there's a huge amount of people, especially millennials who have never set foot in a church, have no idea what you're talking about when you mention anything in any kind of any religious figure or what have you. And the neighborhood that the church is in is about 60% millennials too. And so part of my biggest challenge and opportunity is to really translate this very ancient faith into language that people who have had no contact with it can understand too. And I have a lot to learn from that congregation itself. It is very much an inner city church with a homeless ministry, and they have a needle exchange, a very active needle exchange program, and they've opened their basement to serve as a medical station for injured protesters throughout these protests and so forth. So they're right in the fray of things. And so how do you, what do I have to learn from them and their ministries, and then how do I retool myself to, I've been in it, Omaha is an area where actually a lot of religious language people still do understand, and so now I'm going to one where it's all bets are off. And so, but I remember years ago, I felt like I had one of those moments where I felt like I had the opportunity to ask, what kind of minister do you want to end up being? And I had the audacity, I felt stupid to say it because it felt audacious, but I said, I would like to do for the millennials what Brian McLaren did for Generation X and baby boomers. And that doesn't mean I'm good. And Brian, for those of you not unfamiliar with, he has been a profound figure in the life of many Gen Xers and baby boomers, especially from the evangelical community, helping them become more progressive. And I have no designs on becoming another Brian McLaren, but that spirit, though, to help the millennials negotiate this world and to learn from them. I think the millennials have a heck of a lot to teach us. And so I want to learn from them and also bring my jams and jellies along to help spread a few things for them too. I think they can benefit from us elders, that some the minute piece of wisdom we have to kind of negotiate the world too will be helpful.
So you've got jam, jelly, bread, and wine from La Bouvette. I think you're set.
There we go.
I think you're good to go. Cantor Alexander, can you help us with an appropriate way to
Thank
end?
you for inviting me. So I'd like to say, dear God, please protect us as we go out and as we come in. We honor the direction and memories that will continue to guide us, and pray that our voices will walk your path and will lift your spirits on hard days, and will humble you on days when that is necessary too. May you continue to find God's voice and wisdom as you begin this new chapter. May your community be open to your vision and creativity, and may they be blessed as we all have been by God's love in this world. And I sing today, Shechianu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shecheanu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Amen. Blessed are you, God, who enables us to reach this day of celebration.
Thank you all for being with us today. Blessings
Thanks for
to
the
you.
day.
Thank you. Much love to you. Gonna miss you all. Come and visit.
Careful what you ask for.
Yes.
Oh, no,